I mean, like, yeah, we're having to use frame skip, but for $40, this thing's pretty smooth. Hey guys, what's going on? RetroGamer here, and welcome back to another review featuring the PowKiddy V90. So, this isn't like another one of those NES clones that I've been buying on Amazon recently. No. This is something completely different. This right here is the PowKiddy V90. This is much like the Ambernick handhelds. If you've seen those across YouTube, TikTok, Instagram, those Ambernick things are everywhere. This thing in particular is much like the Ambernick RG35XX, and recently they released a new 2024 version of the RG35XX. I want to take a look at that thing. But this right here is the PowKiddy V90. This is an emulation handheld that goes from NES, Game Boy, Genesis, all the way up to PlayStation 1. Now, this thing, it has limitations, and as you go up further to PlayStation 1, it's gonna not run things perfectly. But for $40 on Amazon, this thing is rather impressive. And we're gonna look at the games and show you, what it can run and what it can't run, just to give you kind of a rough idea of what you're getting yourself into if you decide to buy a PowKiddy V90. But here's the unit itself, and as you can see, well, it looks a lot like a Game Boy Advance SP. Nearly identical. Like, this thing is slightly smaller than a real SP, but it's pretty much like the same shell. Like, if you look at the whole side and stuff, like, it's pretty much the same thing, which isn't a bad thing. Like, I love this clamshell design, and I think it's a really nice unit. It's a little on the light side, but other than that, it's really well built. So the unit itself here, if we see on the bottom, it has a headphone jack, which is a rarity nowadays. USB-C for charging. This is the volume wheel. It has L1, R1, L2, and R2. You could put a little wrist strap right here if you wanted. This is the power switch. And then this is the SD card if you want to put more games on it and mess with some of the internals on it. If we open it up, really nice screen. A really nice hinge too, a strong hinge. D-pad, A, B, X, and Y. Start and select. These are the two speakers. And then this is an options menu. And if we close it here, we'll see that from Amazon, at least, it came with this really cool carrying case. I thought this was super neat. I mean, it just fits right in here, and you're ready to go. It's a really nice case. I mean, it's nothing amazing, right? But what it comes with also is a cord so you could charge it with USB-C, but since most things are going to USB-C anyway, you can use any USB-C. This little instruction manual for the unit itself, you're not really going to need it, though. I mean, this is basically just a plug-and-play unit. You just turn it right on. And that is what we're going to do. We're going to show you the interface of the PowKiddy. So if you've been following me on Twitter, you would know that when I got this unit, I instantly had to flash it with different firmware. Because the PlayStation 1 unit on here, or well, I guess the UI on here, when you're playing PlayStation 1, it won't let you use L2R2. And I was like, this thing was almost perfect. And then they had to mess up the UI. Like, you can't map it at all. It just will not let you. Like, it doesn't recognize L2 and R2. So I look it up online. Looks like you have to flash new firmware on here. And then you have to add something to this file here so that you can let L2 and R2 be enabled. And I was like, this thing was almost perfect. And you had to mess up the firmware. And it was super annoying to get that firmware on there. It took me forever. Now, some of that was my fault. But the fact that I even had to reflash firmware on here at all to have L2R2 work is super annoying. Now, granted, with new firmware, it makes it run a little better, but not by much. The stock firmware was fine, but I wouldn't have messed with it if I could just have L2R2 work. But I really wanted L2R2 to work because I was playing Mega Man Legends on PlayStation 1, and I couldn't use those buttons. I'm like, well, this game's almost unplayable now. So that's something you're going to have to consider if you buy a V90 unit. Some people just don't know how to do that. They don't have a computer to do that thing, or they just don't know how to do it, or they don't have the means, right? So that's super annoying and a real downside. But let's just say that you buy a V90 and you flash the firmware and you get everything up and going, okay? What are you going to get out of this little unit? Well, quite a bit, actually. There's a lot of different emulators from the Game Boy, NES. You can do Game & Watch, Atari 2600. You can do PC Engine, Game Gear, PlayStation 1, even Atari Lynx on here, what I saw. So, there's a lot of different things you can do on here. Now, not everything is going to run perfectly. If you play, the really easy games like NES and Game Boy and Game Gear and stuff like that, those are going to run perfectly fine. But if you go up to Super Nintendo and PlayStation 1, that's where it starts to struggle, and you have to kind of adjust things and use things that aren't the best to make it run decent, right? Now, PlayStation, I expect that. But Super Nintendo was surprising that I had to use frame skip to even get the games to run properly at all. That's really interesting. Kind of odd. I didn't think that Super Nintendo would struggle, but it does kind of struggle on this, which is a little weird. But for $40, it's still pretty impressive. I want to demo a couple games from the Super Nintendo and PlayStation just to give you a rough idea of what you can expect if you buy this V90 unit. So we're going to skip to another clip where I show you a couple games running, just to give you a rough idea of how the V90 runs with Super Nintendo and PlayStation. Well, I hope with the few games I demoed, I was able to give you a rough idea of what this thing can actually do. Now, it can't do things the greatest, but for $40, I'm quite impressed. I think it runs pretty well for what it is. It is a little odd, though, that this thing runs PlayStation better than Super Nintendo. It really struggles with Super Nintendo, especially Star Fox. Oh, God. It's bad. It is really bad. I mean, Super Mario World is even not that great, but it works well enough, but as I said, for $40, I really can't complain about this. The only thing I can complain about, as I said, the firmware. But if you're not looking to play PlayStation 1, then it's fine. I mean, if you're looking to just play Game Boy, I think this is actually a really good thing to buy because, take for example the Game Boy Advance SP. The cheapest ones I found on eBay as of yesterday when I looked online were like $90, the cheapest, and those were pretty beat up and bad. And that's just the unit itself. Then you have to worry about games on top of that and stuff. This thing runs those perfectly. This is a perfect Game Boy alternative if you're looking to get back into Game Boy games or NES or stuff like that. This is a perfect thing. Just playing Game Boy, I've been having a lot of fun just playing Game Boy games on this thing because it's super convenient. It's nice to have. You can just add all the games you want on here. Granted, this thing comes with a lot of them already, but if there's ones that you don't have on here, you can add them on there. And it's just a great idea. I think it's a great alternative. And honestly, if you're just looking to play Game Boy and stuff, I would highly recommend this thing. If you're looking to play PlayStation and stuff, unfortunately, you're going to need to flash the firmware because you cannot use L2 and R2. So it kind of all depends what you're using this for. You have to think, what are you using it for? What are your expectations with it? But after everything that's said and done, if you've seen this review and you like what you see, then I would highly recommend it. I would say go for it. Buy the V90 on Amazon for only $40. But guys, that was my review on the PowKiddy V90. So guys, from RetroGamer, if you liked the video, please like, comment, and subscribe. And I will see you guys back here with another review. See you guys then.